Hello, my name is Tom DuPont. I'm with CodeSmith Tools, and today I'm going to be going over SchemaExplorer. SchemaExplorer is a library included with CodeSmith that is designed to help navigate and explore database schemas. So basically it provides a convenient object model to help with template development that is database driven. But also, CodeSmith has many features and GUIs based on SchemaExplorer. There's a SchemaExplorer tab in the CodeSmith Studio, and properties in a CodeSmith template using SchemaExplorer object types will have special GUIs to help select their values. Okay then, so let's jump right in. I have CodeSmith Studio already open right here, and the first thing I want to show you is the SchemaExplorer pane. So if that's not appearing for you, you go to View, SchemaExplorer, and this pane should pop up right here. Now the first thing I should point out is that this is based off of your configured data sources. So if we come up here to this little button and we hit Manage Data Sources, it's going to bring up a list of all data sources you have configured for CodeSmith. Now currently I only have one database configured, and that is my pet shop database, which I've attached to my local SQL server. So if we edit this data source, notice that I give it the name of Pet Shop. I'm using a SQL schema provider because I'm attached to a local Microsoft SQL server. And then I just have a connection string here, which is the name of my server, the initial catalog, and using integrated security. So a standard connection string, nothing fancy. But we can actually come over here to this little button, and when we click that, it's going to open up a GUI to help us configure a connection string. And it can even help us test the connection string. So if we look at adding a data source, it's the same thing we just looked at. You would pick what you want it to be named. You'd pick your provider type, which again I would do SQL Server. And then you configure your connection string. And so here I'm just doing the same thing again. And because this is configured properly, this drop-down will auto-populate with all the databases in that server. And I can pick Pet Shop again and test it, and it would work. But of course we're not going to add that twice. But that's just a quick overview of using our data sources. So let's get back to our SchemaExplorer. So the SchemaExplorer pane is just what it sounds like. It's an explorer for your database schemas. So if we drop down Pet Shop here, you'll see that we have tables, views, and commands. Commands being stored procedures. You can open any of these up and see the schema for that database. So here we have all the tables that are in Pet Shop. And if we open those tables, you'll see they have columns, keys, and indexes. And the columns even have icons to denote which ones are foreign key associations or primary keys. So it's just very convenient, and it's all right here, ready to go. Now, a neat feature I should point out is that you can right-click on just about anything in here and open up an Extended Properties menu, which will show all the extended properties of whatever you're looking at. In this case, the email column. So not only can you view these, but you can also control them. We can change the names, change the types, or the values. We can add them, remove them. Anything we want, really. We have full control over all these extended properties. And that's not just for the columns. Like I said, it's almost anything. So we can open up the table's extended properties and look at those. Or even the complete database's extended properties. So that's the SchemaExplorer tab. Now we'll come back to that in a moment. But right now I want to actually show you how to use SchemaExplorer inside a template. So I already have a shortcut created to the folder I'm using for this video. So I'm going to right-click on that and create a new C# template. I'm going to call this Basic Schema. And I'm going to come in here and clean that up a little bit. So the first thing we have to do here is bring in our SchemaExplorer assembly and namespace. So I'm just going to bring in an assembly, SchemaExplorer, and import namespace SchemaExplorer. Now I want to start off by bringing in a single property here. So I just brought in a property named Source Database, and it is of type SchemaExplorer.DatabaseSchema. And as you can see, nothing else fancy about this particular property here. So if I build this, and we look down here in our Properties pane, you'll notice that it's here now. And when I go to select the database, you'll notice that it has a special GUI, the database picker, specifically to select a database. And just like the other SchemaExplorer pane, it's based off of all our configured data sources. So I'm going to go ahead and select the Pet Shop. And to really narrate what we just brought in here, I'm going to use a little bit of CodeSmith IntelliSense. So I'm going to do source database dot. And notice all the properties these database schema objects have. They have commands and tables and views, just like we looked at earlier in the SchemaExplorer. If we look at the tables, this is just a collection. It's going to contain all the tables in the database in it. So if we pick one out of it, you're going to notice that each table has columns. It's going to have date created, full name, the database that it's tied to, foreign key columns, etc. It even has more specific collections, such as non-foreign key columns or non-primary key columns. So if we open up one of these columns, because again, this is another collection, if we open up the first one and we look inside of it, you notice that each column, again, has its name, the table it's associated with, the database it's associated with. And something neat here in the columns is that they have a data type, and this is going to be the actual SQL data type inside, and they also have a system type, and that's going to be the .NET equivalent of its database type. So lots of useful stuff in here, hopefully just about everything you could need, and it's all built in and ready to use as soon as you add a property that's using a SchemaExplorer data type. So now let's go ahead and actually make something. I'm going to go ahead and bring in another property here. I've brought in a source column, which is a SchemaExplorer.columnSchema type. I'm also going to bring in a little bit of code here. Now what this is going to do is look at the source column we select, check its extended properties, and see if it contains hello world. If it does, it's going to return the Boolean value on this line. Then also, if it does contain hello world, on the next line it's even going to write out the value of that extended property key. So let's build this. And now our source column has appeared down here in our properties pane. We're going to open that up. And notice again another unique GUI for selecting a column. So I'm going to come down here and select product name. So now if we go ahead and run this, it's going to evaluate to false. And this is of course because there is no extended property on the product.name column named hello world. So if we go back into our SchemaExplorer here, we open up tables, open up product, columns, and name, and go into its extended properties. Let's add hello world as a property. And let's put a value of success. So something important to note here, if we run this again right away, it's going to still evaluate to false. That's because CodeSmith, when you're in CodeSmith Studio, is caching all the schemas that your templates are using to try to optimize and improve runtime. So if we just come over here and click refresh values, that's going to go ahead and refresh all the values for this particular template. So now if we go ahead and run this, it's going to evaluate to true, and of course it's going to print out the value of success because that was the value we typed in. So before we move on here, I just want to show you a few more things we can do with SchemaExplorer properties. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in 3 more properties here. I've brought in a table schema collection, and a column schema collection. So if I rebuild this, we're going to get our new properties down here in the properties pane. So the source table of type table schema is pretty straightforward. It's going to let you select a table out of your specified database. So let's select product. And then the collections, like their name implies, just allows you to select multiple of that type. So the source table collection of the table schema collection will let you select multiple tables. Now, it does something a little tricky here on the source column collection. I've added an attribute called filter. This will make it so that this property is dependent on another property that you specify, in this case, the source table. So what that means, when you go to select your columns in this collection, it's only going to let you pick from the table specified in the source table, so in this case, product. So if we really quickly look back at the source column single property, you'll notice you can select from any table you want. But if we come here to the source column collection, it's only going to let you select from the product table, which was specified by the source table property. So just a neat little feature, helps you refine your templates and control your input. Now there's one more attribute I want to mention real quick, and that is the deep load attribute. You can add this to any SchemaExplorer property by just doing deep load equals true, and this will cause SchemaExplorer to deep load the entire database schema. This is a new feature in 5.0, and it really helps drastically increase speed and performance when you're dealing with a very large database with a very complicated schema. However, this example is really small, and we're not really going to see any return out of this, so I just wanted to mention that. So now let's take all this and make an example that really does something. So once again, I'm going to copy in a little code here. Now what I want to do is for each table in the database, I want to print out its name, its primary key, and any tables that are dependent on that primary key. So we're going to do a nice for each loop here, and for each table inside of the source database.tables, we're going to print out the name, the primary key, and the primary keys. And these are both some methods that I'm going to copy and paste in. So now this is something that often confuses CodeSmith users. Each table has a primary key property of type primary key schema and a primary keys plural property of type table key schema collection. The primary key is an object that holds the attributes of the table's primary key. So it's table, member columns, etc. The primary keys, plural, is a collection of table key schema objects that, in this case, are related to the primary key. So the table key schema has a primary key property inside of it for the primary key it's associated with. It also has a foreign key table property for the foreign table it's associated with, and column collections for each. The point being, key associations are objects in Explorer schema. So let's actually run this, because I think an example will explain it better. So if we look at our output, we want to loop through every table and print out its name, and we've done that. And also we want to print out the columns that compose its primary key. So if we open up SchemaExplorer and we look at account columns, sure enough, it has one column for its primary key, and that is account ID, and we've printed that out. And the same goes for cart. It has one column, cart ID, and we printed that. But now if we look at something a little more complicated, such as line item, it has a composite key made up of the columns order ID and line num, and we've printed both those out. So if we look back at our code real quick, you'll notice that's exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted to print table.primaryKey.memberColumns, and for each of those member columns, we wanted to print out the member's name. So then after that, we wanted to print out the primary keys. And notice that account has none. That is because no other tables have foreign key associations with account's primary key. But according to this, product has a foreign key association with category's category ID column. And if we look, sure enough, we have a foreign key association with category ID, and we can see that here as well. So again, very quickly looking back at the code, we wanted to loop through all the primary keys inside of our table and print out the name of any table associated with that key. So I hope that does a decent job of explaining that and showing it's a little more simple than it sounds. And so there you go. That's a brief rundown of SchemaExplorer inside of CodeSmith templates. But one more thing I want to mention is that, again, SchemaExplorer is a set of libraries that comes with CodeSmith. So you can actually use these libraries inside of other projects if you wanted to include custom assemblies inside your CodeSmith templates. So if you want to do that, all you have to do is reference those libraries in your projects. And that's going to be located at C drive, program files, and then depending on if you install it here, of course, CodeSmith 5.0, and then in the add-ins folder, SchemaExplorer.dll is right there. And that's a CLR library, so you can reference that in any Visual Studio project. And that way, again, you can create custom assemblies that use SchemaExplorer for your CodeSmith templates. And I think that sums it up. So a quick recap. SchemaExplorer is a library that comes with CodeSmith. There's also a pane inside of CodeSmith Studio with which you can look at your database schemas and also control the extended properties of your database. It contains an object model to help you develop templates that are database-driven. Any properties using SchemaExplorer data types will have their own unique GUIs to help you select their values. And it can even be referenced by other .NET projects to help you develop custom assemblies for your templates. So that's it. I hope you found this video to be helpful and informative. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for other videos, please visit us at community.codesmithtools.com. My name is Tom DuPont, and thank you very much for using CodeSmith.